Today's lecture will be over Chapter 21, Section 1. Objectives: Number 1, describe important landforms of Southwest Asia. Number 2, describe the region's key resources. So the first thing that we're going to look at is we're going to look at the area on a map right here. And what it is that we're looking predominantly at Southwest Asia. This is kind of the Afghanistan, Iran, and then we start getting into the Arabian Peninsula. Very important here to understand is that this area, number 1, has been following the Muslim religion for a long period of time, very aggressively trying to spread this throughout the entire area right here. Also, if we look at the satellite image right here, we can see very easily that this is a very, very dry area. In Iran up here, going all the way up to Turkmenistan and Afghanistan, you're going to see a lot of mountains. Saudi Arabia to the west, Yemen, you're going to go ahead and you're going to see a lot of mountains. But again, the deserts are extremely dry here. And so what we see is that in this area, there's going to be a lot of dry area, but we can look up here near Israel and you're going to see that there's going to be quite a few people living in this area. Connected to the Mediterranean Sea, it's going to be a little bit easier to live right on the outskirts of all the mountains and the desert. So an area that's been fought over for a long period of time, you're going to go ahead and see that right in the Israel area of this Arabian Peninsula. But we can go ahead and we can look at kind of what's going on in this area in regards to landforms and resources. Southwest Asia forms a land bridge between Asia, Africa, and Europe, so we see it really connecting all of this area. Region has at its edge huge tectonic plates. Parts of the Arabian Peninsula are pulling away from Africa. Parts of the Anatolian Peninsula are sliding past parts of Asia, and then other plates are pushing up the mountains. So what we see is that we see this being really a geological kind of anomaly right here, because there's things that are pulling apart, things that are sliding past each other, pushing. We've talked about plates and tectonic plates quite a bit, and we talked about this when we started talking about the Ring of Fire in Asia to the east. Well, here it's going to be very similar. A lot of things going on. In the Arabian Peninsula is going to lie between the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. We'll go ahead and we'll kind of show you right here. There we go. All right, so what we see in this area right here is that they're going to go ahead and it's going to be really a waterway and going to be connected for seafaring people. The Red Sea covers a rift valley created by the Arabian Plate movement. The Zagros, the Alberts, and the Taurus Mountains are going to be on the north side, and it's going to cut off part of this region. On the Anatolian Peninsula near Turkey is between the Black and the Mediterranean Seas. And so what we see is that this isn't just one big chunk of land, is that it's kind of divided up. You're going to see different types of peninsulas and waterways. These strategic waterways also include the Suez Canal. Now, we've talked about this before when we talked about Africa, but we just kind of want to show the importance of this right here. We talked about earlier how the Strait of Gibraltar is going to make sure that anybody that comes through that is going to have to be a friend of whoever owns it, and this connects the Mediterranean Sea with the rest of the world. What happens is that the Suez Canal right here is just a little canal that's basically cut right in between the Mediterranean Sea, and that's going to go ahead and that's going to connect it, as you can see, to the Red Sea, and then you can continue on down to the Gulf of Aden, and then you can continue on all the way into the ocean right here. So this area does become incredibly important, and it creates kind of that strategic waterway that's going to allow people to go out into the Mediterranean Sea and into the ocean. In the Arabian Peninsula, it's covered by dry, sandy, windy plains. Wadis is going to be riverbeds that are dry except for in rainy seasons. Iran has stony, salty, sandy desert plateaus surrounded by these mountains right here. So what we see is that we see kind of a difficult area to live. The Anatolian Peninsula is a plateau with some agriculture and some grazing. And Afghanistan's northern plain is going to be farming area surrounded by the mountains. Now, the Golan Heights, if you kind of been following the conflict in the Southwest Asia, specifically in Israel, Palestine, you've probably heard about the Golan Heights. It's going to be a plateau near the Jordan River in the Sea of Galilee, and it's very important because it's a site of conflict because of the strategic location. It basically can make it so that the higher up you are, you're going to be able to see your enemies, you're going to be able to have protection. So a lot of people have fought over this area. Now, you've also got the mountain ranges. Afghanistan's got the Hindu Kush Mountains. It helps frame kind of the southern Asia. The country is isolated by its landlocked mountainous terrain, which makes it so that a lot of people have not come into that area. Iran's Zagros Mountains are isolated from the rest of Southwest Asia. The Alborz Mountains cut off Iran from the Caspian Sea and invaders coming from that area. So as you can see, these mountain ranges are very important because it does stop people from migrating, but it also stops people from coming in. So very strategic, very important. The Taurus Mountains separate Turkey from the rest of Southwest Asia. But here's the important part, is that goods, people, and ideas still move through this region in spite of the mountains. It's very difficult to get through there, but people will continue to move through there. So what we see is that it does stop migration, but it doesn't stop people from moving back and forth and spreading ideas and culture and customs. Now, hopefully you've kind of been following in your world history classes, or if some people have been talking about world history, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Well, this region is going to be surrounded by bodies of water, but few rivers flow all year. Now, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, these are going to be rivers that flow from through Turkey, Syria, and also Iraq, and this creates what's known as a Fertile Crescent. This is very, very old civilization right here, and what we see is that we see the Tigris River and the Euphrates River, and this area right in here is going to go ahead, and that's going to be the Fertile Crescent. Now, what's so important about these rivers right here is that the rivers will end up flooding, and when it floods, a lot of the soil and sediment from these rivers and kind of the riverbeds get dumped into this area right here. And the people that live in this area, this Fertile Crescent, waited for months and months and months, because when this flooded right here, we think about it and we say, oh, that's horribly bad and we don't like flooding. But these people are actually waiting for it to flood, because once it flooded, this area would be very, very, very valuable, because it's going to be so good at growing crops and things like that. So the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, very important. They are going to empty into the Persian Gulf as well. You also see the Jordan River. This flows from Lebanon's Mount Hermon between Israel and Jordan. It's going to empty into the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is a landlocked salt lake that only bacteria can live in. The lowest place on Earth's exposed crust, about 1,349 feet below sea level. Now, the question, of course, is that if this area is so dry, very hard for agriculture and growing things, how can this area have wealth? How can people be rich in this area? And the answer is oil. If we go back and we look at our map right here, you're going to see that Saudi Arabia is very, very wealthy, and a lot of the areas on this peninsula are going to be very wealthy. And the answer to the question about why are they so wealthy is oil. Most abundant resources, oil fields are located on the Arabian Peninsula, Iran, and Iraq. They provide the majority of part of the nation's income. Half of the world's oil resources come from Southwest Asia, and they're found along the Persian Gulf and the coast on offshore sites. The United States and other countries depend on this area to basically grow things. But this is what I kind of want to show you guys right here. Under the administrations prior to President Obama, the United States has basically really put a major emphasis on Israel. And what they did is that they supported Israel. Israel is going to be created in 1948 following World War II, and it's basically a place for the Jewish people to be able to live and have their homeland. Now, the problem with this is the Arabian Peninsula. There's a lot of Muslim people there, and what we see is that these countries want this land, and they call it Palestine. And so they're going to go ahead and they're going to be fighting over this for a long period of time. If we look at countries that are going to be very, very Muslim. What we see is that the Arabian Peninsula, you can go into this area of Egypt, Libya, a lot of these areas are going to be Muslim. And so the United States is basically helping Israel. This land right here that everybody's fighting over, and we'll talk about why they're fighting over that a little bit later, but this area right here, the United States has been helping Israel out, where all the other countries don't want the United States to help Israel. They want them to let them fall. Now, I say President Obama, he kind of backed off a little bit on his aid to Israel, and then President Trump came along and started kind of helping out Israel again. So I don't want to say that President Obama was not helping out, but his support was not as strong as past presidents. So what we see is that the United States helping Israel has actually been a problem for us, because a lot of those countries are going to get together in what's known as OPEC, which we'll talk about later, and they're going to go ahead and they're going to help each other basically drive up the prices, and the United States, of course, doesn't like this. Now, other resources in some parts of the region, the most valuable resource is water. Again, we saw that this area is a real big desert area. Water is relatively plentiful in Turkey, Iran, Lebanon, and Afghanistan. Being able to use this, they're going to use it for hydroelectric power. In other regions, water is very scarce, must be guarded, conserved. A lot of people fighting over this. We also see that gold, copper, potash, phosphate deposits are small, scattered around. Iran and Turkey have large coal deposits. Salts like calcium chloride are around the Dead Sea, but they really haven't been developed. The big thing in this area, of course, is fighting over the water and fighting over oil. This concludes our lecture over Chapter 21, Section 1. Please complete the assessments at this time.